Hello, my name is Nikita Grebnev. I am a student at Georgian College, and today I am covering the final project for the Information Encoding Standards course in the Big Data Analytics program. For this project, I followed the videos in a YouTube playlist, building a secure API and a client to work with it. In this presentation, I will explain how JWT is used in API security, I will demonstrate my API, I will acquire data from it with Postman, and I will make a recommendation on which choice of authentication method is best for API security. In the second part of the presentation, I will answer a few questions and will make a few recommendations about authorization and authentication techniques. Section 1. API. Part 1. Explain how JWT is used in API security. JSON Web Token, or JWT for short, is a mechanism for secure communication between the client and the server. It consists of three parts: header, payload, and signature. The header contains the type of token and the algorithm that is used to cipher it. The payload is the data that client and server are exchanging, and supportive information such as subject, issuer, and expiration time. Finally, the signature works as a hash for verifying whether the header or the payload has been tampered with. Using the algorithm specified in the header, both server and client can check if the payload checks out, and if it doesn't, the call is rejected. In the YouTube playlist, the author goes over a few different types of authorization and ends up using OAuth 2.0, the flow of which is presented on this figure here. This implies that there should be multiple actors in each of these requests: the authorization server, the client, and the user agent. While it might look intimidating, in reality it's pretty simple. Otherwise it wouldn't be so popular. Following the video instructions, I managed to build one within an evening. Here you can see the project structure. The project itself can be accessed with the GitHub link, which is attached in the resource section of the presentation. For the sake of demonstration, I quickly threw together two more routes and added an object they can peer into. The object is a simple array with two strings in it, and once the client authorizes, they can access those strings, either altogether or by ID. Here you can see me making these requests in Postman. Part 4. Make a recommendation on which choice of authentication method is best for API security. Probably there isn't a single perfect way to implement authentication, as different technologies have been developed to suit different needs in various situations. Right now, the best security for API are token-based, so it would be wise to use JWT and OAuth. But there is no stopping you from utilizing different security systems for different parts of the API. An example from my old job would be a financial system we've been working on. It uses OAuth in conjunction with a custom Pulse API that repeatedly checked the validity of the client. And if the response was suspicious in any way, this API would restrict the access for this client to other parts of the system. And of course, having an SSL certificate never hurts. Section 2. Questions and recommendations. Let's imagine that a company is asking for me to act as a consultant on the project. They have some questions that they hope I can answer. Question 1. How can we transfer personal data securely within their network? Well, first of all, users should not transfer personal data within company's network. Company's network is for company's data. If necessary, personal data should be encrypted using one of the various methods such as OAuth, JWT, or SSH. Proprietary company data should be transferred using company's keys and tokens, preferably with a monitoring system that could see if anything is wrong with the keys or requests. Question 2. What security protocol is best for transferring personal files? Well, I can recommend 3. First one is SFTP, file transfer with SSH. We connect the users with a SSH tunnel and have them log in with SSH keys. The downside is that they need to have keys, and if they lose them, we need to reassign the new keys. Second one is easier, is HTTPS. It's file transfer using TLS certificates. We get the TLS certificates for our system, and we only allow transfer through certified services. The third one would be a group of any custom-made token-based file transfer systems. Preferably, we will use OAuth 2 and GWT, and arguably it is the safest options because anyone trying to hack into our system will just not know what to do with it. Question 3. Can we encode and encrypt images? Well, of course we can. Any picture is just a text file arranged so that the parts of it are displayed on different parts of your screen in a meaningful order. This means that any encryption protocols that are used on text will also work with images. Examples include, but are not limited to, RSA, the same thing that uses to encrypt SSH keys. DES, the encryption system protocol that is a little bit deprecated, but there is a new version of it. And IES, probably the heaviest and heavy-duty security protocol there is right now. Question 4. Our database cannot be moved from the site, and we need to be able to access it externally using a secure API. Can you explain the architecture of a secure API? The architecture of secure API consists of a client and a server. And let's assume that we have a user that uses a client to connect to the server. The user tries to access the resource. The server replies for the user that the user is not authorized, and it requires the user to enter credentials like password, email, username, whatever. User enters credentials and receives a token. Client sends the request for desired information, the one that the user tried to access in the first part, and it completes it with a header and a signature. The server checks the request and checks the signature, and if everything is correct, it replies also using a header and a signature. Client checks the server's reply, checks the header, checks the signature, checks the data, and if everything is correct, it shows it to the user. Question 5. Can you recommend a secure framework for coding an API? Again, many technologies are developed in many different ways, and it's hard to play favorites when each of them has its own implementation. The one that I would recommend is the framework called OAuth 2.0. The basic process that it follows I explained in the previous question, but basically it's a multi-stage authorization framework that allows access to the hosted resources in a limited manner. The resource's owner authorizes the exact part that the user can access, and the system should provide the type of response, client ID, and few other optional parameters for authorization. Question 6. What data interchange format should we use while transferring data between locations? Thankfully, there are fewer options here. Between XML and JSON, it's preferable to use JSON due to it being more lightweight and compatible with the most recent encoding and authentication techniques. The data should be packed with a header and a signature. The transfer itself should pass through secure protocols like HTTPS or SFTP. Question 7. How should we store our data in our many locations? Well, depending on size of the data, its variability and the frequency of access to it, and also the amount of locations, the data can be stored in many different ways. I will talk about the lower spectrum and the bigger spectrum. If the amount of data and the frequency of access to it is relatively small, we can use a simple database or multiple databases with REST API and authorization techniques such as auth or GWT. If the amount is large, like Amazon large or Google large or some government survey data, and the data is accessed and modified frequently, we can use a distributed storage, an example Hadoop with its HDFS that distributes and duplicates data, or various different systems. Question 8. What are the ethical concerns related to transmission of personal data? Recently, there have been multiple scandals about various websites storing personal information and then selling it to advertisement companies. That's unethical. Also, if the personal data is transferred without encoding it first, it can be accessed by malicious people and then utilized in social engineering to steal personal accounts or even access to banking systems. Finally, unencoded data can be used to access private information that can be used to blackmail people. The ethical concerns lie both on companies and the clients. The companies should act ethical and don't operate the data in the way that will pose danger to their clients. And their clients should know what data can be dangerous to be publicly available. I would like to thank you for taking this dive with me, and I hope that my exploration of authorization and authentication technologies was sufficient. Thank you again for watching, and take care.